All right, folks, welcome everyone to the final frontier. So I am your host, Ryan Faloona. I am here with Stephen BigBeat, and we have a very special guest for you. We have our Analyst Ratings colleague, Andrew Beghou, joining us today, and we are going to be discussing space, the final frontier, companies that are involved in space, why we're going to space in general, and we're going to show you how to find some of this information in Pro. So I'm incredibly excited. This is something that means a lot to me. I've always liked space as a kid. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I decided that for one of my props for today, I was going to get my Darth Vader lightsaber, because this is actually one of the reasons that I want to go to space. I would like to conquer the galaxy, and I would like to use the Force in any way that I can. Now, all jokes aside,
I brought my Stormtrooper, looks like my Funko Pop guy, and I have my Squawk from Star Trek. But I don't think I've outdone Andrew Beghou today with the Top Gun outfit.
Unfortunately, you haven't, Steven. So for this webinar, I want to be referred to as Maverick or Pete Mitchell from Top Gun.
So, okay, Maverick. I think you have a new movie coming out pretty soon.
They do, part 2. Tom Cruise will be flying in this version, so any excuse I can to whip out the old flight suit, I'm down. And what better than talking about space?
Well, Andrew, it looks like you're ready to go to space right now with that.
Yeah, this is a little different than the flight suit version Galactic has ready. It's green. Theirs is more bluish, but I'm pretty ready. All I need is the aviators, and I'd be good to go. So,
how old were you when Top Gun came out, Andrew?
You know, I wasn't born when Top Gun came out. Top Gun came out in 1985, but I've probably seen it like 100 times. So,
awesome.
Well, don't feel bad, Andrew. I was born in '84, and I have also seen Top Gun over 100 times. So that's quite all right. And like I said, this entire thing has been something I've really been into since I was a young kid. You too, Steve, right?
Yeah, let's get right into it, man.
All right, let's do it. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to talk about, Steve, do you want to make a sector call here? Is space one of the things that you're looking at in general?
Yeah, I mean, I made a sector call, a couple weeks ago with space. A lot of people jumped in the SPCE. We were early in that too. Very good. We got in around $6.96. Most of you already know I'm already out. I dumped at around 19. So you'll know that I am not looking to get back in just yet. I think Beghou asked me earlier today what my target price is there. I said about 12. So we'll see where that number goes. But the dumping still isn't. There's a lot of people there that has insider shares. And so I'm kind of waiting on that a little bit.
Gotcha. Now, one of my follow-up questions to that is, obviously that's a huge win. I mean, 6 and change all the way up to 18 or 19 now? That's a huge win. Is there that Virgin Galactic more on the commercial side of things? Do you have any idea or any inclination on something else? Maybe not commercial, maybe something like defense, rockets and military, or anything like that?
Right. Brian, space in and of itself as a sector is a big call, right? But it's a big sector, right? So when I say infrastructure, it's too big, right? So let's narrow it down today. Let's break it up for people so they understand the different divisions of sector within it, and my new call in the subsector of space. So let's break it down first. Let's talk about defense. In defense, you need rockets, right? You need to shoot the other guy down. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. And the military is the biggest buyer of those rockets, and the biggest buyer is the Pentagon, and they've got billions and billions of dollars to buy those. As you know, the Israelis have Iron Dome, and a lot of other countries like China have a missile defense system, as well as Russia. And there are not that many companies that produce that. So when you're looking at the defense sector within space, you need to look at it from a few stocks. Now, I'm going to give them to you right now. The first one we're going to talk about is LMT, Lockheed Martin. Looks like you got it up there right now. Right, if you'll notice back in the beginning of the year 2019, you'll see that it's a straight shot, right? And the reason being is all of Iran and all of the things, not to mention just the market pushing it up, but if you put the SPY against the LMT chart, you'll see that it blew past the SPY.
Let me go ahead and add that for you here.
Right. And the other thing that added to this jump was that the president announced Space Force. And for the first time, Space Force has a new general, has a new leader now, and they have a new division. So that in and of itself is telling you that this got more room to run, right? And we know that the government loves to spend in the defense. Even even in down years, they still spend in defense.
Absolutely. Now, Lockheed Martin, this is a great example of that. And before we move on, I actually want to ask Andrew a couple of questions about this. Are there any other stocks that fit into this same type of thing, where they're affected by Space Force? They're going to be okay during down times because we still want to do this. Is Lockheed Martin kind of the best of breed, or do we have something else here that maybe we should take a look at?
Sure. Well, there's certainly other defense stocks that you can look at. One of them would be Raytheon. And the reason that there are Raytheon, which is ticker RTN, and the reason they're like lots of these, Stephen was talking about earlier just now, lots of these defense stocks have been doing especially well lately is because, I mean, I think most people are aware, but the United States government this year is spending, what, $738 billion on defense, which is more than the next, well, I believe, 5 largest countries in the world combined for spending on defense. So there are certainly lots of different opportunities to play this sector, and Raytheon, ticker RTN, is another option for sure. And I believe one little thing, real quick, is I think for the Space Force actual budget itself, which is part of that $738 billion, I think it's only $40 million right now, I believe, which has been actual budgeted out for Trump's Space Force.
Now, Andrew, would you also consider Northrop Grumman in that sector too as well?
Yes, yes. Anything that falls under that defense umbrella is definitely part of the sector.
Yeah, and Northrop Grumman also creates the whole defense system itself that actually shoots the missiles. So I look at Northrop Grumman as now one of the things about Northrop Grumman here, and I'm looking for it, I'm hoping it'll do. You'll see that it's a high price stock here. I would play the option side of this because it is a high price stock. I would look at it. I would look up the option side of it in the news feed, Ryan, and see which direction that the latest option plays have been. And you'll probably see some heavy call buying here.
All right. Sorry about that. I'm having a little trouble here with my mouse. Just give me 1 sec to pull that up. I actually have a workspace pre-built for this, so we should be okay here. Let me go ahead and add a news feed and get Tesla out of here. Although Tesla also part of space now with them sending cars into space. So how about that?
Right? We also created a watch list for the space sector too as well, Ryan. So we want to show them how to get that watch list down as well.
All right, just give me 1 sec here. I seem to have inputted too many commands at the same time here. So, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to check option flow on, what was that, Northrop Grumman? Is that correct?
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead and do that here. What we're going to do is we're going to adjust some of these categories. I'm going to get rid of the wire. Actually, excuse me. I'm going to keep wire and signals on, and then I'm going to go ahead and filter for option. And Steve, were you trying to look up calls? I'm sorry, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, let's just look up the options on NOC, right? So if you type in NOC, got it, right? For NOC, for Northrop Grumman.
There we go.
Excellent. And if you just take off the word call there, I think there you go.
All right.
And you'll see all of the calls. I'm not seeing very many puts. I saw them previously, but I think those puts were just hedges. I'm telling you that the call buying that I like on NOC is very interesting. You'll see lots of calls and big numbers on those sweeps too, 28, 54. That's a good indication of where it's going. Now, Northrop Grumman is topping a little bit here, and let's see what breaks out. The market seems to be a little heavy, as I've been saying. The market tops pretty much in, but Northrop Grumman probably has some room to run here.
All right. Awesome. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Andrew, do you see any of this being reflected when you're going through the analyst notes on different companies?
Yeah, no, of course. So obviously here at Benzinga, we're up at, me and the analyst team are up at 5 in the morning, every single morning, trying to cover all analyst ratings, initiations, upgrades, downgrades, price target changes. And we also do our best to put up as much color as possible. So something I kind of want to get to actually is with SPCE, which is Virgin Galactic, the stock that Steven mentioned earlier, which went from like $7 to upwards of, I think, 20 the other day before pulling back today after hours. So if we go to the analyst section on Benzinga in the news, newsfeed filter,
All right, let me go ahead and do that for you here. Let me just create a new workspace because it looks like I was cluttering this up the first time. So here we go. Are we okay with the two generic sources, signals and wire? Or do you want me to put press releases on there as well?
So what I would do is I would actually go to categories.
Okay.
I would go to analyst ratings. I would leave them all checked. That's okay.
Gotcha.
And I would just click done. And then I would just type in the ticker SPCE, which is for Virgin Galactic. Okay, so actually what I kind of wanted to just point out here is there really hasn't been that much coverage on this stock over the last like couple months. Everyone's kind of aware that obviously the stock's had a really nice run from like 7s to like the 20s. But actually Morgan Stanley initiated the stock back in December 9th, which I'm sure like Steve was saying earlier is probably a pretty good time to like be in this stock. And what's nice is we had like the coverage up where they initiated it with an overweight rating and a $22 price target. So as Ryan's pulling up the screen right now, if we look in December, I mean, what are we saying there? Like this was on December 9th. So we're looking at about that, what, $7, $8 range?
So here is December 9th. And what's interesting about this, I'm really glad that you brought this up, Andrew, because what's interesting about this is that on December 9th, you have several things converging here that we can see directly from the chart. We have a gigantic green candle of volume that's showing you that there was all of a sudden buying interest in here. We have a gap that looks like it gapped from the 730s all the way up to near 8 or even into the 8s. And then we had it close higher that day. And from that day, it actually took off and went to near the exact price target. So they initiated this with a 22 price target. It looks like it went from 740-ish up to what looks like almost 20. So Steve, of course, beat them. Steve had a slightly better price on his bottom tick, which is no surprise to any of us that have worked with Steve. However, what we can see is that the analyst is confirming exactly what he was saying. And even though there's not a lot of different color here from different analysts, clearly this one sparked a gigantic run. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Now, my follow-up question would be, is there any other stock that you know of off the top of your head? And I'm sorry for putting you on the spot here. Is there any stock that you know of off the top of your head that had something similar where it just went on a gigantic run, perhaps because of some of the new analyst ratings? Or is Virgin Galactic really the best example?
Well, I would say that Virgin Galactic is definitely the best example. And kind of what I wanted to showcase with this specific situation on Benzinga Pro for pro users is that we don't just have like the initiation with an overweight and $22 price target. Obviously, it's very important for users to know that. But actually, when we went through the note, we got little snippets that can just kind of give users an overview for why the analysts like said what they said. So as you're clicking here on the screen, our first color headline, which is those headlines with the update in all capital letters. Shares feature biotech type risk reward, where today's space tourism business serves as a funding strategy. And they go on to actually describe like what it actually is, like what's going on with the business. Like give me some metrics here. Next color headline we have, space tourism for a price of $250,000. That's how much it costs to go on this flight. It's a 90-minute journey, and there's currently 600 reservations. The first commercial flight is targeted for late 2020. Okay, so what's important about that is we have, okay, this stock is pretty risky. I think like the note had like it had a scenario where the shares could go to 1 or 0, I believe. But then we have, okay, the stock's risky, but then we have some information, all right, like what does it mean? How does the business work? Like what does it cost? Like what do you actually get from your investment? And then the third thing, we have like a bigger picture kind of color headline. So we have a chance to disrupt the multi-trillion-dollar total addressable market is really what is likely to drive upside. And they talk about specifically hypersonic P2P travel, where they forecast $800 billion in annual sales by 2040. So now, like that's like a big mouthful. $800 billion of annual sales, like for a total market, is massive. But something they're referring to with that, and real quick, don't want to take up too much more time on this part. We have other stuff to talk about, but hypersonic travel would allow it's like airplanes flying higher above in the atmosphere or even above the atmosphere. Not totally sure on that, but you could take like a flight from Chicago to like New York to like China or Shanghai and do it in 2.5 or 3 hours. And if that's possible, and like this company, I don't know, has something to do with it, or just like in general, like that potentially could be a massive market. But like they say in their notes here, it's very risky.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. So just to add some color, before I add some color to that, I gotta ask, Steve, are you one of these 600 plus that has the reservation on Virgin Galactic already? I have to know.
I tell you, Ryan, it costs about $10,000 a pound, so I do not have a reservation, but I sure as hell would like to go to space. I have, I like being in the pool. I like weightlessness, but the truth of the matter is, no, I don't have a reservation yet.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's time.
Guys, just really quickly, you're only weightlessness for 5 minutes, I think. So you're traveling all the way up to the orbit, and then you're only in the free fall weightlessness for 5 minutes, I believe, before you go back.
With the vomit comment, it's always available.
There you go.
That's still got to be a pretty exciting feeling. And this, you also bring up another really good point. So as you were mentioning that about hypersonic travel, you're right. Anytime that you're traveling faster than the speed of sound, you need to be higher off of the ground so that the people on the ground don't experience the sonic boom that you would be generating. And as far as traveling outside of the Earth's atmosphere or in low Earth orbit, that's going to need to be rocket propelled. You're not going to be able to use conventional jets because there's no air up there. There's no oxygen to actually push through those jets. That would need to be rocket propulsion. So hypersonic flight seems like there's going to be a lot of different aspects to it, and there's going to be a lot of different companies that are going to end up contributing to this. Forgive the choice of word here, to this burgeoning field. I really think that we are in the infancy of this. I think that this is only going to continue. I think that the price for actually traveling to space or low Earth orbit is going to do nothing but drop as more and more competitors are going to get into this market. You think of things like Blue Origin or Tesla that are also developing their own commercial space projects. So really good point. Definitely looking forward to all of this. And so, what's next here in terms of like
the space SPCE? Let's get back to that chart. I think a lot of people are asking about the chart. Let's get back to that chart. So, one of the people that have been asking me about how did I get that bottom part? How did I bottom ticket? Well, Ryan, pull it back up. You'll see the volume down there was too heavy in the beginning, right? You'll start to see it was picking up in the red. Volume to the downside was picking up. All right, I knew there had to be a bottom, right? And so, okay, if you'll notice, there was about 6 or 7 days when it kept forming a bottom. That's very important to me in technical trading when you're forming a bottom. So when that bottom formed, great. I didn't get in then. If you'll notice that last day, you'll see that big green bar. That's when I got in, right? I started to get in right before that big green bar. The reason was that I thought that it had formed a bottom. Now, it automatically created a gap, which I thought, it could come back and fill that gap, but it didn't because it had other gaps to fill, right? And so what I was looking for is the days prior after that I was in the stock that I wanted to see more volume. If you'll notice, more volume came in, more volume came in, more volume came in, and then it got really bullish. And I was excited after that, right? If you look when we got to about 1920 and the bullishness all hit the market and everybody in the chat room was all excited about it, okay, time to hit the buzzer, right? That's very important to me. When everybody's bullish, time to get out, right? When the taxi driver is giving you stock tips, time to get out. Now, here's what's interesting. About 3 days ago, you saw a gap created, right? What's happened today?
It looks like that gap was filled.
It was filled, right? Now, what I'm looking for is it got filled. Is it going to bounce back? Bounce back a little bit, but you're also seeing another gap down. And you look at that, and Andrew asked me where I thought it was going back to. Look, the next gap down there is probably around $15.50, $16, and then it could go all the way down. If it doesn't hold that, we're going back to 12, and BigBeat will be having a heyday.
All right, and that's actually a really good point. So just to add to that, if we take a look during this initial run here, you'll notice that actually when it popped on that first gap that you were talking about and it traded up to around the 960 level, it actually came back down and tested a little bit. And this support here is actually going back to November, where you had a couple of these huge candles. You can see here's a nice little wick on this particular candle, and that support level coincides with where it sold off to, and it did exactly as you were saying. It actually bounced from there, and then it did that a little bit more. It consolidated in this other range that had been carved out this time back in October.
But I confirmed that bullishness with the volume, right? I did not test it. I let it tell me. I didn't tell it.
Absolutely, and that's a really important distinction. So this is really a great trade. Excellent job. I can't wait. for me personally, because I missed this first one, I'm actually hoping this does trade back down. Again, since we're in the infancy of this particular industry, I don't think that this is done yet. And I think that there might be a huge move, although I would not be able to tell you when that's going to happen. So.
And you know what, Ryan? I think it's a good time now to talk about my new subsector call within the space sector in itself. We talked about the defense side of it. Andrew talked a little bit about the commercial side. All right, my new subsector call within the space sector is satellites. Satellites are very important. It is literally the basis of everything in space. We need to have communication. We need to have the ability to move. And what I mean by that is Garmin, GRMN. We need to have GPS, right? We need to have satellites up there for weather, right? The weather patterns tell us whether or not a rocket can go up. We don't have the GOES satellite systems, geostationary, GOES. Those weathers are in one place. But we have satellites that are going around and around and around, right? And we have a lot of space.
Looks like
That I think are the next subsector.
all right, awesome. Looks like I had a little bit of a connection interruption there, so I missed the second half of that. I apologize. Did I miss any ticker that you were trying to pull up?
All right, Ryan. You know what? I think I've given you my list of tickers. If you'll show our audience here the ticker list that I have put together for the subsector of satellites.
So here we go. So the first ticker on that list is actually Intelsat, ticker
All right.
I.
Real quickly, Ryan, if you'll do it, take a chart of SPCE and put that over this one.
Great idea. Let's do that right now. I'm using the compare function within Pro here. I'm going to go ahead and type in SPCE, and here you go. So you'll be able to compare the price of SPCE with the current price of Intelsat. And what does this tell you here, Steve?
So if you'll notice, I set it back when I bought it at Space, SPCE at 696. I started to see some buying, right? And I want to see it firming up. Ryan, show them that it's firming up.
SPCE?
No, on Intelsat, right? If you look at it over the last few days, it has gone a little bit lower. But if you look back in November to December, see all those heavy volume drops, those heavy sell signals, right?
Right.
That's it. Do you see those heavy sell signals anymore, those volume bars? No.
Not even close.
What are you seeing, Ryan?
Well, right now I'm seeing that this stock is consolidating here.
Correct. That's why I got excited about SPCE. What made it cool was the catalyst of as Andrew said, Morgan Stanley upgrading the SPCE. But right now, that's what I'm trying to say to traders. Get in before it's hot, not after it's hot, right? The idea is to find these things. You find them in Benzinga Pro, and it's a very good example.
Buy low, sell high, Steve. You tell that to me on a regular basis. We might as well say the same thing to the
and let's keep
customers
going,
here.
Ryan. Let's look at Iridium. Let's look at L'Oreal. Yep.
And while I'm flipping through these tickers, Andrew, if we come across any of these tickers and you recognize that analysts are starting to make some comments on that, definitely let me know. What I'm going to do here is we're going to take a look. We're actually going to do Steve's watch list. We're going to import Steve's space watch list, and then I'm going to show you how to apply that to the news feed so that it's easy to find different analyst ratings if they happen in the future.
Hey,
So,
Steve, can I ask you a quick question while Ryan's doing that, just like a general curiosity question. For the last stock you were just talking about, what was the cause of that massive drop down for Intelsat before it found like that bottoming, like stabilization level? Just curious.
I don't know what the cause of that was. I'm not looking at it from a perspective of news desk. In that situation, it's a technical trade, right? I'm looking at it from a perspective of a chart only.
Okay, cool.
So one of the things that we can do here actually is we can actually type that into the news feed, and we can actually see if we can go back that far and discover why that actually took place. Boy, I am really having some trouble clicking around here. I apologize.
Call buying on Intelsat coming in. I like that.
All right, so looking back here, Andrew, to answer your question, looks like this was happening back around November 12th. So what we can do using Pro is we can actually filter the newsfeed to only show us the stocks we care about and then review some of this. So just within a couple of seconds, even with the misclicking that I was doing, I've scrolled back to November 12th, and I see here that Intelsat shares are down 4% after hours, hearing that JP Morgan downgraded from overweight to neutral. Price cut from 34 to 22. So we've just spent time talking about analyst ratings, and now what we've done is we've used the news feed to go to filter on the stock in question, go back to where we see this precipitous drop on the chart, and now we're starting to piece together here what might have caused that. So going forward, using the same train of thought, guess what happens if we start hearing some of these analysts that are upgrading the stock or moving it from neutral to buy, or putting the positive ratings on it? We can assume that we're going to see some positive movement in it, and it will probably try to fill these gaps. Gaps always like to be filled. So we'll go ahead and see. That's a really great question, Andrew. I'm glad we were able to do this as an example.
Exactly, and just really briefly, and like kind of talked about earlier, for Intelsat in that situation, we also have some color as well to describe like why. So that's what's great about Pro is I just asked Steven like, well, what happened? We both weren't really that sure. All we had to do is do a quick ticker search on Pro for I, and we can see it was an analyst rating, probably in like another event, and then a little color on why. That's what's super helpful about our platform.
Absolutely. Now, to continue going through the list, so just to recap, because I kind of jumped around a little bit there, we had Intelsat, we had Iridium, we had Loral, that was ticker LORL, and right now we have EchoStar, ticker SATS. Now, one of the things that immediately we can recognize is that this chart looks a little bit different. Steve, do you have any color on this particular stock?
On EchoStar, well, no, what I'm saying is having all of the satellite stocks together, getting a good feel for them. But EchoStar and all these like SiriusXM, all these companies out there is communication, right? Dish Network, watching movies. All of these things are going to have to be fixed, right? And new ones put up and better and more clients and that kind of thing to handle it, right? How many people are upset when your GPS sends you the wrong place, right? And that's because the technology is so old. We need the new satellites, right? A new one just went up a month ago, and GPS has gotten a little bit better, right?
That's true. And I'll tell you what, that is one of the most frustrating things ever. When I rely on that GPS, and when I punch that address in and I end up at the wrong place, not a good time. Not a good time. So,
Brian, hold on. I want to show something real quickly. This is really cool as heck. Look at Intelsat. Look at ticker I.
Got it.
Now, when I got really excited about SPCE, and I bought it low, right, and it consolidated down there on SPCE, on Intel, what really got me excited past just the Morgan Stanley was the call buying in there, okay? When someone went in there and bought a $20 call when the stock was at $9, I thought they were absolutely nuts. But that's the cool thing about having unusual options within Benzinga Pro. Now, look to the right, Ryan, and look at the call buying now in Intelsat. What do you see?
Well, let me go ahead and refilter this newsfeed by Intelsat. And right here, I can see right at the top here, this was actually took place today. Intelsat $15 call sweep, 2,000 contracts at 87.5 cents. Versus the 4,000 that were already in the open interest. So, Stephen, this is a really, really good point. The stock is trading around 6, and you saw massive call buying today. What a timely example. So, right here, this is absolutely something to watch. And as you mentioned here, it looks like we're near a bottom where it's been consolidating. So, options, of course, being able to define your risk. This might be a great thing to watch over the next few days.
Now this call here is January 2021, so that gives some time.
Yeah, I believe we call that a leap, right?
Yep.
All right. So this is a really great example. Let me go through some of the other tickers that you had mentioned to me. I believe we just left off with SATS.
We can look at MAXR.
MAXR. Let's do it.
Yeah. I have been trading MAXR pretty heavily. I'm not in it right now, and you can see why. Yeah. So, you know, the issue there was same situation. Maxar had, now I do know this one, Andrew, they had some bad news coming out on them, that they had some issues, right? But they fixed those issues, and Canada came out with a huge buy order for some of their products, and MAXR jumped. It just skyrocketed. And so we got out of, I'm already out of that one, full disclosure there. But again, same situation. I was looking at the call buying, I was looking at all that fun stuff, and I was looking at the volume. If you look right now, the volume is lower. and it's to the negative side, so it's probably not a good time to be looking at MaxR right now. I'll give a pullback. But
And actually, so
ahead.
while you were saying that, Stephen, I went ahead and I pulled up MaxR in the news feed, and I'm just reviewing the last few news stories here. Look at this. Lo and behold, Credit Suisse ended up upgrading MaxR Technologies to neutral. This was back on January 15th. If I find that on the chart here, we can see that this was just a couple of days ago. And our news desk giving it a 2 bullish sentiment indicator on here, letting you know that this could be positive. This run may not be over, but we'll have to watch and see how it goes. So another really great example here. And Andrew, to go along with your point, if I scroll back to the January 8th, here's some of the color that you were talking about on some of these upgrades. All right, this one looks like it was from JP Morgan, and you have a couple of different posts here with some added color for this particular stock. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Let me show you real quick how to actually import this watch list and then filter a news feed on this watch list. That may help actually cut out the noise and make this process a little bit simpler. So the first thing that I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and clear this off. And I'm going to go ahead and add a watch list. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new watch list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name one that's called Space Companies. All right. Create watch list. Watch list is blank. Now, you can add in the tickers just like we did, just one at a time as you discover them in the market. But BigBeat has actually done a lot of this work for you. So one of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and click Help, which is in the upper right-hand corner of the platform. And then I'm going to click on Visit Help Site. And this is going to take you to the Benzinga Pro Help Site, where Steve has his own watch list category right at the bottom. So right from the homepage, just scroll to the bottom. BigBeat's watch lists are all there, and Space is going to be one of them. So you can see here that I don't necessarily want to scroll through this entire list, so I'm going to hit Control F on my keyboard and then type Space into the find box. What that's going to do is that's going to take me right to his watch list. We're going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to go ahead and open his watch list. What this is going to do is when you click on the picture or when you click on the click here link that specifies for download, this is going to go ahead and download this watch list in a CSV file for you. So you can see right down here in the bottom left-hand corner of my browser, space.csv has been downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and open that. I've got multiple monitors here, so let me go ahead and put this on this monitor. Here we go. Lo and behold, the first ticker in this watch list was Intelsat, which we just spent a lot of time talking about. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select all of these tickers. All right, so I'm just going to click and hold and drag. Then I'm going to press Control-C to copy these tickers to the clipboard and then go back to Pro. When I'm back in Pro, now that I have the new watch list already created, I'm simply going to put my cursor in the search bar at the top, hit Control-V, and paste all of these tickers in. It found an invalid symbol, so it's letting me know that. I'm just going to hit Close, but please keep in mind that even if you do get that warning, Pro's smart enough to know what you're doing, and it's going to load the rest of those tickers in anyway. So here we go. Now we have this watch list that was created. We did pretty much no work. BigBeat did all of the work for us. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to filter a news feed on this watch list. Let me go ahead and add a news feed here. And to use Andrew's example, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click Watch Lists, and then I'm going to do Space Companies, the watch list that we just created. All right, so now I'm only seeing news posts that have to do with the companies on this watch list. And the first thing that I can see here are a bunch of different option sweeps. So this actually may be very helpful for you if you're trying to follow those option sweeps, as Steve mentioned earlier. The next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on categories, and I'm going to click on the Analyst Ratings category, just like Andrew had instructed me earlier. Press done, and now what I'm doing is I'm seeing all of the different analyst ratings, both the initiations and the color that we talked about, for only the companies on this watch list. And if I was trying to go through this particular sector, it'd be very easy for me to review all of these different notes because none of this is wasted. These are all companies that we care about. So that is how you can actually import watch lists into Pro. Like I said, Steve has a lot of these done, and then you can filter the different tools by this watch list. So in the example here, we filtered the news feed. Something else that you might want to do if you wanted to follow the options flow is you can actually use the signals tool, turn on option activity, and then do the exact same thing. We can add a filter here. We can filter the watch list that we just made. space companies. Now we're seeing only the option flow for these companies. And if I wanted to take this a step further, I could actually go back into signals, turn on the 52-week high and the 52-week low signals. So now I'll know if any of these companies are actually making new 52-week lows or highs. Looks like a couple of them were here. Lockheed Martin, new 52-week high. We covered that one as well. All right.
I would be interested in, Ryan, if I'm making a big purchase in any of these stocks, I would be very interested in the insider buying and selling. Tell me, what is the CEO buying and selling of their own company, right? So if you change the newsfeed, right, to the insiders.
Absolutely. So we can do that very easily. I'm actually going to close the watch list down for right now. I don't need it because we can still filter these tools based on the watch list. And like Steven said, what we're going to do is we're going to change around some of the categories and the sources to illustrate this point. So I'm going to uncheck analyst ratings here, and then I'm going to go over to sources, and I'm going to uncheck signals and uncheck wire. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn on press releases and SEC. And just to denote that this is a little bit different in case I want to put multiple news feeds on one screen, I'm going to go ahead and color these categories differently. As we always say, the SEC should be colored green for money, and the press releases should be colored brown for paper. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and press done. And now I'm going to go ahead and type in Form 4. And now what we have here is we have a list of all of the insider trades only on the stocks that are on the watch list that we filtered by. So it might be very easy to go through these and take a look and see, hey, if the directors are buying, if the people inside the company are buying, maybe this is something I should take a look at.
And Ryan, if you add the word price, P-R-C-E, that'll limit down even further. And you can look back on Monday, this Monday, Orbcom, ORBC. If you take the watch list, as we now know, when you've added the watch list of space, you'll see Orbcom back in Monday, all the insiders were selling it, right? They were selling their own stock.
All right, right here. So Monday, January 13th, this is exactly what Steven was talking about. And sure enough, there are only 3 different sales here. It looks like several thousand shares selling at 409. And if you want to see what that could have potentially done to the stock, all you have to do is click on it. It'll load it in the details tool. Let's go ahead and flip over to the chart, and let's take a look and see what happened since the insiders did that. So we said that that was January 13th. Here it is, January 13th. And lo and behold, after the insiders sold, the stock is slightly lower. So great call, Steve. Great example right there. Is there any other way that you like to filter this, or did we cover it?
Ryan, 3% down, you buy the options, you're playing the put side, you're killing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, are there any other ways that you like to filter this watch list, or is this, or excuse me, this news feed, or do we pretty much cover it all here?
I mean, there's other ways that we can look at within breaking down the space sector for me. We could also break it down, and I will tell you that I like to use the screener. If I'm looking for a certain stock that is very interesting, and I'm looking for in a sector, I need to boil it down. Why don't we go to the screener and show the screener and put the watch, not the watch list, but they're already in there. The industries are already in there.
All right, so let's flip over to the screener. I happen to have a tab here. Oh, and look at that. I actually, looks like I was doing some of this already. So I'm going to go ahead and resize my details tool here a little bit so we can see more of the screener for this particular example. And it looks like what I had plugged in here was I had aerospace and defense plugged in here. So just by looking at the results in the screener from filtering it by aerospace and defense, I'm seeing a lot of familiar tickers that we talked about today alone. We got Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. These were the stocks that are already on the watch list that Steve was talking about, that we've already discussed. So clearly we're on the right track. Now, just to recap real quickly how I got here. Normally your screener is going to look like this with no filters applied. All I had to do to get that in there was to click on industry and then do aerospace and, excuse me. And if I could type today, that would really be great. But man, I am struggling mightily with the keyboard today. Holy cow. Aerospace and defense. So you can scroll through the entire list, or you can actually start typing in the name of the industry, and it will filter that list and make it easier to select. We're going to go ahead and select aerospace and defense, and that's going to go ahead and show you all of those stocks that we were just taking a look at. Now, Steve, aside from the industry here, were there any other filters that you wanted to apply? And are there any other columns that we want to see? Any other information about these companies?
Columns and all that, but you know what? We're talking about Intelsat as a trade idea, right? So
Right.
you can actually put the symbol in, right?
Absolutely. So if you want to see, if you just want to do that, you can go ahead and type in I using the symbols field up here at the top. We'll go ahead and put in Intelsat, and we'll take. Oh, Intelsat's not in the aerospace and defense industry.
They're wrong.
Okay, so here we go. So all I needed to do then was to actually clear that industry out. And I don't know if you caught that real quick. Let me demonstrate that again, because this is actually very helpful. In any of these fields that you have any of these filters applied to, you can very quickly clear it by mousing over it and clicking the little eraser button that's on the right side of the field. So you can actually clear out individual fields by going to the individual field, or you can clear all of them by clicking reset filters in the upper right corner. For Steve's example here, we're going to go ahead and clear away the aerospace and defense industry, and here we go. Intelsat is here. Now, Steven, what other columns did you want me to add to this?
You know me, Ryan, I like to see the margins, right? I want to see companies making money. So let's see what their margins are. Let's look at their PE and PEG ratios. Let's look at the finances of the company. How much debt are they having to struggle with right now? And I think once you get that, you'll get a good idea and a good example of what's going on. And you can probably also add I to the details page on the right-hand side by clicking on it. Yeah.
Great call.
There you go.
All right, so here we go. So I went ahead and I loaded it. Oh, it looks like I sorted that incorrectly. I loaded in profit margin, PE ratio, and PEG. It looks like we don't have any of these for Intelsat.
And why is that? Because they're not making any money right now. But I can say this much, that if you see a positive catalyst news, that's when you're going to see this stock zoom, zoom, zoom. If you see it getting a big contract like Maxar did, MAXR, they were down. Their numbers were down, their margins were down, they weren't making any money. All of a sudden, Canada comes in with $1 billion deal, and the stock is no longer sitting at $3. It's now sitting, or $9, now sitting at $20.
Hey guys,
right?
real quick question, kind of like similar to what we're talking about right now. How do you see like the short interest on like a stock on Benzinga Pro, or the short float?
Let's show them the float.
All right, so we actually don't have short interest data, but what he's asking, we can actually get a different way. So what we can do here is hit percent share float. We're going to go ahead and add that column to the screener, and then shares outstanding.
There you go.
All right. And there we go. So now that I've added these, now, Steve, was there anything else I needed to add here in order to deduce this, or the actual float? Correct.
I like Andrew's idea. Let's go with the float itself. You know, yeah, exactly.
Because I was just talking about when there's a stock that's heavily shorted and there's like a catalyst, like whatever the news is, that's like either good or bad, but usually good. That's something that causes a short squeeze, which will create like a lot of those really, really big pops, because the shorts have no choice but to cover, because hypothetically, if you short something, even though it never happens, they can always go up forever versus just going to zero if you're going along a stock. So that's something I like to look at as well.
Right, and if you look at it, Ryan, Andrew, you're absolutely right. If you think about it right now, the float is at 65 million, right? And you're looking at the price of the stock is $6.07. There's your answer. How much money is needed to push the stock all the way through the roof, right? Not much. So a little bit of volume in this thing, and it can zoom. And it's got lots of gaps back up.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I went ahead and did while you guys were having that discussion is I went ahead and added Maxar to this. So like you were saying, you can actually filter this by one ticker. This allows you to filter it by multiple tickers. So if there are several companies that you want to compare some of these stats for, you can very easily do that by loading them into the symbol field here in the screener.
Let's do that. Let's add Global Star, GSAT.
There we go. For some reason, it's not finding it.
We can also add SATS. That's cool.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we can add EchoStar. We talked about on the communication side of it. Viasat right below it. Yeah, VSAT. Any of those we can add.
VSAT.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so now we've added several stocks to this, and we're able to compare all of these different numbers with these stocks side by side. Really quickly, I had a real quick question here that I wanted to address. Tracy was asking, could you tell me how to get to the space watch list again? Absolutely, it's very, very simple. All you have to do is click the help icon in the upper right corner. That will actually take you to the help site. And then on the help site, to get to the watch list, you just scroll to the bottom. All of his watch lists are sorted in the BigBeat's watch list section. So it's very simple.
Can you copy that direct link to the chat room and she'll just get it?
Great idea. So here we go. Let me go ahead and send this to the chat. So there you go. So that is a link right to the help site. Great idea there, Steve. Thank you for looking out.
Thanks for the question too, by the way, Tracy.
Yeah, and we'll take any more of these questions. We've got a little bit more time left here. If you have any questions about how to do this, the sector call itself, or any questions about analyst ratings for Andrew, please send them in. I will go ahead and get to them as soon as I can.
Ryan, we don't normally get him, so let's ask him some analyst questions. I have an analyst question.
Go ahead, Stephen. Fire away.
You know, you're up so early in the morning. You actually beat me up in the morning, which is normal. Not there's not many who do, right? Maybe Charlie does. Look, let's be honest. Is there a favorite analyst or analyst company or bank that you use more than anybody else?
Well, I mean, so the number one goal when we wake up early in the morning is to make sure that we have the ratings covered as well as we possibly can, meaning we get as much up as possible, especially for more important names like bigger name companies like Intel or whatnot that'll report today. But at Benzinga, we have a lot of relationships with a lot of different investment banks. Some of them that would come to mind, at least like right now, that we have particularly good relationships with: Goldman Sachs, we have Raymond James, we have Rosenblatt, we have Stephens, we have Needham. We've got a lot of really good relationships with these banks. What's important about that is with these relationships, when we have time, because there's only a few of us actually working on this, and there's some days hundreds of ratings, so it's very difficult to read like thousands of pages with a couple people potentially. We try to go through these notes to highlight like some gems for bigger name things like we can. So earlier for space, like we had that note. So like we were able to like read through the note, because we have a relationship with Morgan Stanley, read through the note and actually get some of it so that our clients could at least look at that really quickly and get like a few key aspects of information for that. So yeah, that's kind of, I hope that answers your question, Stephen.
And I think that's a great point, Ryan. Let's show them the analyst ratings section and show them how we can pull up the watch list within the analyst ratings.
All right. So as I'm doing this, I got another question. Will this webinar be saved on the site? Yes. This webinar will be available on the exact same help site we coached you on getting to. And there's actually another, in fact, let me just demonstrate that real quick. BigBeat's watch lists are at the bottom, but the fourth category down is past webinars. And give us some time to upload this. It will absolutely be present at the end of this webinar. So Steve, to go back to your example here, let me go back to my workspace here and close this stuff down. Looks like we still have the filter for the insider buys. Now I still have the space companies filter applied to this news feed. So what I'm going to do here now,
so Ryan, maybe go to the calendar and
excuse me,
to change it to analyst ratings. And here's what I'd like to see: add the watch list space. And as you know me, I like to sort it by upgrades and downgrades.
All right. So my apologies, Stephen. What I did here is I just clicked on calendar from the left-hand side. That loaded in the calendar tool. And at the top of the calendar tool, you have a drop-down that gives you access to the different calendars that we offer. The one that we're going to pay particular attention to right now is the analyst ratings calendar. Now, what we can do when we do this is we can filter this tool by the exact same watch list that we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Click on watch list and then click on space companies and press done here. Now we're seeing all of the different analyst ratings for the companies on that watch list. And as Steve mentioned, you wanted to do it for the upgrade downgrade, correct? The action on security. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and click on sort, and it will sort. It'll show you the downgrades first. If you click it again, it'll show you all of the upgrades. And here's our friend Intelsat in here from Raymond James, another one of our friends. So how about that? This is actually one of my favorite tools.
How to create a thesis. So we started with a technical chart. We started with a sector, a subsector, We saw some call buying in Intelsat. We saw that it was starting to form a bottom, and now we see where others are seeing the same thing. That's how Benzinga Pro, that's the power of Pro. It tells you how to pull those nuggets out, right? We're not just giving you the stock, we're also showing you exactly how to do it yourself, where you can find anything. What I want to look at, Ryan, you just pulled it up, you said Intelsat, that upgrade. Look at what the action is on the price targets.
All right, so that's actually already loaded here. You can see that the price target and the prior price target are over here on the right-hand side. And you, just like in the screener, you can click and drag these columns and rearrange them any way that you want. So if there's one that's more important to you, you can go ahead and do that. Now, right here, it looks like the price target from Raymond James was 12. We didn't have a previous price target in there. Now, that's incredible, because if you recall correctly, the stock is trading at 6. And you got a price target of 12. Raymond James is telling you that they expect a double on this. No time frame given, but still, that's a really healthy price target upgrade. So this is a really, really handy tool, very easy to use. And Steve, I wanted to touch on something else that you mentioned. Benzinga Pro gives you all these different tools to find different trading opportunities. And what we've done here is we've actually used several in conjunction with one another to find this out. So we didn't rely on one data point. We actually collected multiple data points to form the thesis that Stephen was talking about. And Benzinga Pro gives you access to many tools that allow you to do this. It's not just one. So we checked out the options activity, we checked out insider buying, now we're checking out analyst ratings, and all of the while we're reviewing the different news that could have caused this stock to move in one direction or another. So really, really great point. Really illustrates the power of Benzinga Pro.
And Ryan, you can actually sort this column also by name as well. So if I wanted to see all of the upgrades and downgrades on Intelsat, I would be very interested not to see just what Ray J said, but what other companies out there said too. So you can sort it by the symbol.
Right. So what I did was I just typed that symbol in at the top and pressed enter, and that will show you all of the, oh, I think it's it because I actually had this sorted here on the name. So my apologies for that.
Okay, you can scroll down, no problem, to the eyes.
Well, Stephen, you were kind of mentioning this earlier, but one thing that's kind of cool, like about Benzinga Pro and how it's kind of like a platform for like everything you need to use for trading and investing and whatnot, is you can like go back at least through these analyst ratings and actually like kind of talk about earlier, like see what they said in some instances for color. So we have some color for Intelsat, for example. What's nice about this is it can either test a thesis that you have, so you could maybe think about something different than like what the analyst might have thought, which is totally fine. That's how markets work. Or you could be like, I don't know anything about Intelsat. Like, what the heck is like going on here? What's the news been? What do the analysts think? What are the upgrades and downgrades? And what's great about Pro is that we have all of that stuff like right there.
Yes. All the historical data for the upgrades, downgrades, all the stuff that you're talking about, Andrew, that's all right there.
And it's very easy to access. As you can see here, even when I mistakenly clicked a few things, it only took me a second or two to scroll down to the exact area that we needed to get. And as Steve was saying, here are all of the different analyst companies that have upgraded or downgraded Intelsat. And we can actually compare all of that along with the price targets.
And if you look, Brian, the prior price target to the new price target on Intelsat, show us what you see there.
All right, so just going down the line here, obviously we did not, on the upgrade from Raymond James that we already covered, they did not have a previous one. They gave a price target that is twice the price of the stock. If we go down, it looks like JP Morgan has a neutral one. The prior price target was 22 and the price target is now 9. Now that's still 3 points higher than where the stock is currently trading at, and that's not even a bullish analyst rating. So if we take that one step further, we look at Evercore. They had a prior price target of $38 on this particular stock, and they lowered it to $11. That is still higher than where the stock is trading. So, Stephen, you talked about a bottom earlier. Now we're taking a look at another piece of data that is helping you confirm that, hey, we might be at the bottom, or this is the area that we consider low, so that you can buy low and sell high. Absolutely. And you can continue to do that with the other analysts that are in here. So we have a REIT here, it looks like. Sorry if I mispronounced that. They did not have an analyst or a price target. They have a current price target of $39. Stock is trading at $6. And if we review the other price targets here, 19, 22, 32, 22, 27, 50. by an Evercore. So obviously this stock is trading lower than what a lot of these different analysts think. This could be an opportunity for you to get involved.
Yeah, and like kind of like we mentioned earlier with the analyst ratings, we actually do have some of that color from like Evercore ISI, from like Raymond James to kind of like paint a color. We have that information about like the float, like short information and whatnot. Steven just went through a lot of different technical things as far as like looking at candles and certain things he looks at. And we have news. Like, what else do you need to really like either trade around like a current thesis you have, or like build the new thesis that you have, or trying to like learn from? So that's what's fantastic about Pro.
Can you show Andrew how to find those analyst ratings?
Sure. So if you go to just like a newsfeed page, Ryan.
Sure.
And you just like click newsfeed. Let's click categories.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just pick analyst ratings. Let's just click that. And what's nice about that is you'll have the entire thing selected. So we're good there. So you click done. And you go to I, and you type in I on top. Okay, so if you scroll down, like kind of certain things we said earlier, like it's important to like look at a chart and like see like, okay, like why is this getting hammered? Like why is it going down so much? But like, okay, the analyst gave it a rating, but like why? Like either for my thesis or to learn about like what the heck is going on with this company? Like why would a stock like drop that much? So what's nice here is we have some headlines from the 13th where we kind of walk through what, you know, JP Morgan, why they downgraded them and like lower the target to 22. I guess they're talking about some kind of C-band process looking more complicated than it only seemed weeks ago. Looks like a pushback rather than private auction of airwaves from center, blah, 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 has gained momentum. So I personally don't know anything about that, but to me, I'm like, okay, looks like they maybe lost a contract or something did not go the way it was supposed to go. And if you're doing research, and everyone does research differently, of course, it's like, well, what does that event actually mean to the company? How important is it? And then like, and you factor in technicals, like Steve was just talking about too, you can really paint a really big picture by just using all the tools available here at Benzinga Pro.
It's really a helpful tool. And as he was saying, all you have to do if you want to take a look at the chart, just click on the ticker, click on the chart tab, and now you can actually just look at the chart right next to the analyst newsfeed. You can kind of piece together the situation that you find yourself in. So definitely a really, really powerful tool. We would be absolutely welcome to any other questions that you have. I really quickly, before we take any of those or move on to the next thing, I really quickly want to correct my own error from what we were just talking about. We were listing all of the different ways that we can view these companies. And when we got to the analyst ratings calendar, I actually had a watch list filter applied. I then tried to apply a ticker filter. And the issue here is that it's actually filtering on one or the other. So what I did here is I actually removed the watch list filter and I typed in the ticker I, and that gave us exactly what we were looking for. Now, I was able to scroll down to some of the other Intelsat analyst ratings, but what's nice here is that now I'm only seeing Intelsat. So what I can do now is I can do Steve's favorite thing, and I can actually filter on actions on security. So I'll, of course, first see the downgrades. And if I click it again, then I can see the upgrades. And this actually might be something else where I can check out the different price targets. So let's do that. Let's sort by price target. Looks like the lowest one we have here is 9. And oh, it's sorting differently because of the decimals. And it looks like the highest one we have here is 50. So or even 100. So there's, I'm sorry, Steve?
When you sort by those analyst actions, right? Upgrades, downgrades. I also look to see if there's more upgrades than there are downgrades, right?
Yep. And in this particular case, it looks like there's slightly more downgrades than upgrades. But that might be something to watch because as that changes over the next few weeks, things could change for this particular stock.
And you can also filter it even lower by date. So if you only looked at the last 3 months, that's how I look at them. So if I look at, if there are a lot of downgrades in the past, like the 2019, okay, that's great. But if I could also sort it down by date too.
All right. For the sake of the example here, let me just do a trailing 30-day. That's actually one of the presets that we have. Of course, that didn't.
I would probably go the last 6 months, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Say again, Steve? I'm sorry?
I would go the last 6 months that you can do that. But it's a good example of how to do it, right? Is if you feel like you're not sure when the dates are, just kind of narrow it down a little bit and see how they are. But we know the Ray J was not too long ago, a couple months ago, I believe. So, yeah.
And so, Steve, I did exactly what you were saying. I went several months back. I went back to July here, and sure enough, there's our data that's populated there. So that's exactly right. There are a number of different ways that you can watch and consume this data. So So looking around here, I don't see any other questions, but that's okay. If you think of a question after the webinar is finished, you can always reach out to us. We are accessible every single day. I'm accessible every day by phone, email, or chat. Steve is obviously very active in the Pro chat room and also available via chat and email. And Andrew is also available upon request. He's often busy doing the analyst ratings and getting all of this data in here for you to consume. So I just want to thank all of you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Again, this is one of my favorite subjects. This is something that has a very special place in my heart. And Steve, I love your sector calls. You have been on absolute fire with your calls. This looks to be another one. And what I love about this particular one is, in addition, you gave us subsectors to take a look at, and you gave us calls where things are in their infancy. So there may be plenty of time to take advantage of some of these different calls. So remember, folks, it doesn't matter if you're on the light side or if you're on the dark side. Space is cool, and Pro is going to give you the tools to get stuff done in the market. So if you guys have any questions, please reach out. Otherwise, as always, happy trading.